Ahsoka Episode 5 Shadow Warrior was, I'm not really sure how to describe it, to be honest. It was really freaking good. The best Star Wars that we've had in a while, and some have even said it's the best Star Wars content since Revenge of the Sith. I don't know if I would go that far because the Clone Wars TV series was really freaking good as well, but I think there is an argument to be made that it's the best Star Wars content since that series came out, and easily in the top 5 of the best Disney Star Wars content. Watching this episode, I was taken back to what I consider to be the peak era of Star Wars for me, personally. And that was when Revenge of the Sith came out and the years that followed it before the Disney buyout, when we had the Clone Wars. Now, I had seen the original trilogy before I saw the prequels, but the prequels were the Star Wars films that I grew up with. Revenge of the Sith, I have always loved, and in the years that followed the prequels, we of course had the Clone Wars, but also that's when I really got into reading the novels like the Darth Bane trilogy, the Thrawn trilogy, Old Republic stuff, and my favorite Star Wars novel, even to this day, Darth Plagueis. To me, that's when I was immersed in the franchise hardcore. And this episode brought me back to having the same feelings that I did for Star Wars all the way back then. So, needless to say, I love this episode. But not everyone has been as positive on this series, and I think after this episode, honestly, a lot of critics are going to have egg on their faces because this was undoubtedly some incredible work. And for all the Dave Filoni haters out there, take a seat. This episode proves why Filoni should have always been in charge of the creative process at Lucasfilm. Alright, that being said, let's move into the spoiler section of this review. The main focus of the first half of the episode is the reunion of Ahsoka and Anakin, and this reunion was absolutely incredible. If you grew up with the Clone Wars and watched the development over many years of the bond and relationship between these two characters, this was a very emotional reunion. And I and a lot of Star Wars fans have been waiting to see Ahsoka and Anakin meet again post Return of the Jedi, post Anakin's redemption, but also to see Anakin and Ahsoka in live action, and this did not disappoint. In fact, it made me only want more of the scenes involving these two in live action. I want more of this. I want more of this content, and I hope this isn't the last that we see of Hayden Christensen's Anakin in this series, whether it be in this season or a potential season 2 or maybe even the Dave Filoni movie. So Anakin reveals to Ahsoka that he has one final lesson that he needs to teach her, and that is to live or die. And I've seen some people confused about the lesson that Anakin was trying to teach Ahsoka, but to me it was pretty obvious. If you have seen the Clone Wars and Rebels, you understand what Ahsoka has been through and how it has shaped her as a person. And this is why I stress in nearly every video that I do on this series, you need to see Rebels, you need to see Clone Wars, and I don't think that is too much to ask of fans. I am really sick and tired of seeing certain critics complaining about how this show should explain and recap Rebels and Clone Wars, and I'm just like, listen, if you're one of those people, stop expecting this franchise, or any franchise, to hold your hand. That's like saying that Return of the Jedi should have recapped Empire and A New Hope. It's like, nah, go watch the movies. I mean, and the same thing here. Go watch the shows. Rebels and Clone Wars are right there on Disney Plus for you. And if you don't want to check them out, well, I'm sorry, but this show is honestly not meant for you. It's meant for fans of those shows and the fans of the Ahsoka character. And we're being rewarded as fans of those shows because we have seen those shows and we have kept up with these characters. I've seen those shows and I don't want to recap taking up time that we could use to tell the story of this show. And I'm being rewarded as a fan of Rebels and Clone Wars because of that. It just, I don't know, I hate this trend of people being so lazy as to expect a recap every episode or every new show. It is an absolutely ridiculous expectation. I mean, it would be one thing if it was like The Rise of Skywalker, where you had to go to a completely different medium to get the full story, the novelization of the film. But the Clone Wars is a TV show. Rebels is a TV show. Ahsoka is a TV show. It's all part of the same medium and presentation. It's not too much to ask to see those shows first. And again, this is a show meant for fans of Rebels and Clone Wars. So we can get the conclusion of plot lines and character arcs that began in those shows. It is what it is. Alright, so Anakin's lesson, live or die. Ahsoka left the Jedi Order and left Anakin in Season 5 of the Clone Wars, and when she learned in Rebels that Vader was Anakin, she came to believe that she was partly responsible for Anakin's fall to the dark side, and by extension, for the atrocities, including Order 66, that occurred because of Vader. Not to mention Ezra going missing and Sabine going off with the bad guys. So she is a character who has been carrying around the burden of a lot of guilt and a lot of regret. Anakin is trying to show her that he is more than Vader. He is more than his failures. He is more than his mistakes. And that she is also more than her mistakes and failures. And she can either die in her regrets or rise above her shortcomings and live. The whole point is that we as people, we are not our worst mistakes. We are not our failures. We are more than that. No one is perfect. Everyone has light and dark to them, and it's the picture of a person's life as a whole that matters. But for some reason, and this is true in real life, the bad things in our life seem to weigh on us more than the good. And that's where Ahsoka is at the start of this series, and Anakin is trying to free her of that burden that is slowly killing her. At first, he battles Ahsoka as Anakin, but he goes back and forth to Vader as well, and dude, this is so cool. There is a part where he looks like Hayden Christensen, but he has Vader's voice, the James Earl Jones voice, and he says, "You lack conviction." And I got chills down my spine, straight up. It was so good. But in the end, Ahsoka finally gets it and chooses to live and chooses to accept the mistakes that she has made, but not let her past define her future. Not to die in her past, but to live for the future. And I think that is a powerful message. It's something that I know I've struggled with and can incorporate this lesson in my own life, and I know it's probably the same for a lot of you. And it's philosophical stuff like this which attracts me to the series, and this is why I fell in love with Star Wars. George Lucas was a philosopher, and so is Dave Filoni, and this is why Filoni should be running Star Wars. Now, shout out to the live-action Clone Wars segment, and I believe the actress who played Kid Ahsoka is the same one who played Kid Gamora in the MCU. She did a fantastic job. I love this part of the episode. It's been a dream of Clone Wars fans to see that show translated into live action. I love animation, but man was it awesome to see it in live action like this. Also, shout out to my boy, Commander Rex. Good to see him in live action as well. Something that I also think was really brought into focus for this episode, especially with this segment, that I don't think a lot of people really realized or understood, and I certainly didn't realize it until this episode, but the Jedi were using freaking child soldiers in the Clone Wars. That fact alone goes to show you how far the Jedi had fallen. And I mean, they had strayed so far from their morals and were so wrapped around the finger of the Senate, the politicians, that they let freaking children fight the battles of a rotting republic. It's honestly amazing that Ahsoka is not more messed up than she already is. And honestly, you can kind of see how Barriss Offee ended up the way that she did near the end of the war. So then we move on to the second half of the episode. We really focus on the search that Hera and Jacen are having, trying to find Ahsoka and Sabine. Of course, Sabine went off with the bad guys, but Ahsoka, we're not really sure where she is until the second half of the episode. Jacen can actually hear the lightsaber battle between Ahsoka and Anakin in the World Between Worlds, which means, yo, this kid is so powerful in the Force. I really want to see more of him in the future, even if it's just like in a comic book or a novel, or hell, maybe even in the Rey film. But what I did find strange was the fact that Hera could also hear the fight as well, and that, I'm not gonna lie, that honestly didn't sit well with me. I understand that the Force flows through all living things, but that doesn't mean, or at least it shouldn't mean, that everyone can use the Force. Just because you have the Force doesn't mean you can use it. I mean, if that was the case, then why isn't everyone in the galaxy using the Force? What really separates Jedi and Sith from everyone else? It's like Syndrome said in The Incredibles, once everyone is super, no one will be. And I don't know, that kind of takes away some of the specialness of being a Force user, if that's the case. And maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe it just means that Hera herself is Force sensitive, which I don't really like either, because we already have Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine being Force sensitive, in addition to Jacen, and honestly having Hera be Force sensitive too. It's just a little unrealistic that there's this many Force sensitives in one group of characters. And I hope we don't go down the road that everyone is able to use the Force, because if we do, that could really break the internal logic of the universe. So yeah, that was probably my biggest issue with this episode, and honestly with this series so far. But we'll see where Filoni is going with this. I do trust him, and I gotta give the man the benefit of the doubt. He hasn't let me down yet. Anyways, thanks to Jason, they do find Ahsoka in the water, waking up from her near-death experience with Anakin, and that is obviously what was going on here. It was a near-death experience. She was in a state between life and death, which is probably why Anakin didn't look like a traditional Force ghost, because they were in a realm of the Force. They weren't in the physical world, so she was kind of in his playground pretty much. So I think it makes sense, a Force ghost, when you're actually in the Force, when you're in the realm of the Force, whether it be the world between worlds or the netherworld of the Force, whatever it may be, that the deceased, they take a semi-physical form. They look like they did in life. They don't look all glowy and stuff, but when they appear in the physical world, because they're not a part of the physical world, because they're not of the physical world anymore, they simply appear as ghosts. I think that makes a lot of sense. I know some people have some other theories about this, but I think a lot of people are reading too much into it. I think it really is as simple as that. Anyways, when Ahsoka is rescued and she wakes up, we get a bit of a wardrobe change for her, the Ahsoka the White, as some are calling it, and I really like this change for her. It's really subtle, but you can see it in her personality, in her tone of voice, in her level of confidence. A weight has been lifted from Ahsoka, and I think she's finally begun to forgive herself. So she is taking Anakin's lesson to heart, and she is starting to really live again, live in the present, and live for the future. And I think that was really good acting from Rosario Dawson here. Anyways, Ahsoka enlists the aid of the Purgles, the space whales, and using their natural ability to jump through hyperspace, she is off to a new galaxy. And I wish that Hera and Jason could have followed her, but I understand why they didn't. Kind of dangerous bringing a kid to a completely unexplored galaxy. But Ahsoka and Huyang are on their way with the promise to bring back Ezra and Sabine. And speaking of Huyang, I better never have anyone make my boy sad again. Seriously, when I saw sad Huyang, I wanted to give him a hug. Like, this droid was in the Jedi Temple, he saw the Order fall, and now this, the breakup of Ahsoka and Sabine. Yo, stop breaking this droid's heart. Anyways, I'm super excited for episode 6. We are heading into new territory, a brand new galaxy. I'm really not sure what to expect. But the moment that the Purgles enter the new galaxy, I mean, what are we going to see? What's this galaxy going to be like? We have never been outside the main Star Wars galaxy. That is new frontier, and it's super, super exciting. So tune in when we go live on Patreon every Tuesday night at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time for Ahsoka live reactions, and we'll find out together. Until the next one, this is JeskerJames with a Z, and I am signing out.